What happens when Hollywood's nicest guy finally snaps on live television? In just 35 seconds, Keanu Reeves turned the view into absolute chaos, and what he said to Joy Behar left the entire studio in complete shock. Before we get into this insane confrontation, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the moments they don't want you to see, and the truth behind the fake smiles. Last night on The View, what started as a simple conversation about Keanu's latest project turned into one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. And trust me, you need to hear exactly what went down. Keanu Reeves walked onto the View set looking relaxed, wearing his typical casual style, ready to talk about his new movie. The audience loved him immediately, cheering as he took his seat next to Joy Behar. Everything seemed normal at first. Joy smiled at him, welcomed him to the show, and the other hosts seemed excited to have him there. But things took a turn almost immediately when Joy decided to bring up Keanu's personal life instead of focusing on his work. She leaned forward with that look she gets when she's about to ask something she thinks is clever and said, "So Keanu, you're known as this humble, down-to-earth guy. But let's be real, you're worth millions. You ride motorcycles. You do all these action movies. Isn't this whole nice guy thing just an act for the cameras?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the tension building in the room. Keanu's smile faded a little, but he stayed calm. He said, "No, Joy. It's not an act. I just tried to treat people with respect. That's how I was raised." Joy wasn't backing down, though. She laughed in this dismissive way and said, "Come on. Everyone in Hollywood has an angle. What's yours? Are you trying to sell us something with this whole Mr. Perfect routine?" The other hosts looked uncomfortable. Whoopi tried to jump in and change the subject, but Joy kept pushing. She continued, "I mean, you've been in this business for decades. There's got to be some dirt, some scandal. Nobody is this clean." Keanu sat up straighter in his chair. His voice was still calm, but you could hear the edge in it now. He said, "Joy, I came here to talk about my film and the incredible crew I worked with. I didn't come here to be interrogated about whether I'm secretly a bad person." Joy waved her hand like she was brushing him off and said, "Oh, please, don't be so sensitive. This is what we do here. We ask real questions. Maybe you're just not used to being challenged." That's when things started to really heat up. Keanu leaned forward and said, "Challenged? You call making up accusations and attacking someone's character challenging them? That's not journalism, Joy. That's just mean." The audience started reacting. Some people were gasping. Others were starting to clap for Keanu. Joy's face turned red. She clearly didn't expect him to push back like this. She said, "Excuse me? I've been doing this for years. Don't come on my show and tell me how to do my job." Keanu shot back immediately. "And I've been acting for years, but you still felt the need to question whether I'm genuine. So I guess experience doesn't matter to you unless it's your own." The tension in that studio was absolutely insane at this point. The other hosts were frozen. Sunny looked like she wanted to disappear. Sarah was staring down at her cards. Whoopi tried again to step in, saying, "Okay, let's all take a breath here." But Joy wasn't done. She pointed her finger at Keanu and said, "You know what your problem is? You can't handle a strong woman asking you tough questions. That's what this is really about." The audience reacted loudly to that. Some people booed. Others shouted. Keanu's jaw tightened. He stayed quiet for a second, and you could tell he was trying to keep his composure. Then he said, very calmly but firmly, "This has nothing to do with you being a woman, Joy. This has to do with you being disrespectful. There's a difference between asking tough questions and just being rude for ratings." Joy stood up from her chair. Yes, she actually stood up. She said, "Rude? You want to see rude? You come on this show with your fake humble act, and when someone calls you out on it, you can't handle it. That's what's happening here." Keanu stood up too. The whole studio was watching this unfold. He said, "I've been nothing but polite since I walked through that door. You started attacking me the second I sat down. And you know what? I don't have to sit here and take this." Joy crossed her arms and said, "Then don't. Nobody's forcing you to be here." The audience was going absolutely crazy now. People were shouting, some supporting Keanu, others defending Joy. The producers were probably freaking out behind the scenes. This was live television falling apart in real time. Keanu looked at Joy, then looked at the other hosts, and said, "You're right. Nobody's forcing me." He turned to the audience and said, "I'm sorry you had to see this. I really did come here to have a good conversation. But I'm not going to sit here and be treated like this." Joy said sarcastically, "Oh, what a shock. Can't take the heat, so you're leaving. Very mature, Keanu." That's when Keanu lost it just a little bit. Not in a yelling way, but you could hear the anger finally breaking through. He said, "You want mature, Joy? Mature is not ambushing your guests. Mature is not making up stories about people just to create drama. Mature is actually listening, instead of just waiting for your turn to attack." But clearly, that's not what this show is about anymore. He started walking toward the exit. Joy called out after him, "That's right, walk away. Just like all the other celebrities who can't handle real questions." Keanu stopped and turned around one last time. The whole studio went silent. He said, "And this is the part that really got everyone talking. You know what, Joy? I've met thousands of people in this industry. Good people, bad people, everything in between. But I have never met anyone who works so hard to make others feel small just to make themselves feel big. That's not strength. That's just sad." The audience erupted. Some people were cheering so loudly you couldn't hear anything else. Joy's mouth was hanging open. She tried to say something back, but Keanu was already walking off the set. You could hear his footsteps echoing as he headed toward the exit. Joy turned to the camera, trying to regain control, and said, "Well, there you have it, folks. Another celebrity who can't handle honest conversation." But her voice was shaking. You could tell she was rattled. Whoopi jumped in quickly and said, "We're going to take a break. We'll be right back." The camera cut away, but the damage was done. Backstage, according to people who were there, Keanu didn't stop walking. He went straight to his dressing room, grabbed his stuff, and headed for the exit. Staff members tried to talk to him, tried to smooth things over, but he was done. He told them, "I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I expected better." Meanwhile, back on set, during the commercial break, Joy was apparently arguing with the producers. She kept saying she didn't do anything wrong, that she was just doing her job. The other hosts were quiet, not really backing her up. Some of the audience members were leaving. Others were on their phones, already posting about what they just witnessed. The clip started spreading online within minutes. Twitter went absolutely insane. Instagram was flooded with reactions. TikTok exploded with people taking sides. Everyone was talking about it. Some people were praising Keanu for standing up for himself. Others were defending Joy, saying she was just doing her job as a host. But the majority? They were Team Keanu all the way. What made this even crazier was that Keanu had always been known as the guy who never gets into drama. He's the one who takes pictures with fans. He's the one who gives up his seat on the subway. For him to walk off a show like this? That said everything about how badly the situation had gotten. The View's official social media accounts went silent. No posts about the episode, no clips shared, nothing. They were clearly in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to handle this mess. Some of Keanu's co-stars and friends started speaking out too, not directly addressing the incident, but posting supportive messages about him, talking about what a good person he is. It was like everyone in Hollywood was rallying around him, without even mentioning Joy's name. The controversy kept growing throughout the night. People were analyzing every word that was said, breaking down the body language, creating memes, making jokes, but also having serious conversations about how we treat celebrities. The ratings for that episode? Through the roof. The controversy had everyone tuning in, sharing clips, talking about it. But at what cost? The View was getting attention, sure, but not the kind they probably wanted. Industry insiders started weighing in too. Other talk show hosts, journalists, entertainment reporters, most of them were careful with their words, but making it clear they thought the situation could have been handled better. Some pointed out that great interviewers know how to ask tough questions without being disrespectful. The next morning, the story was still dominating social media. New angles kept emerging. People found old interviews where Keanu talked about staying out of drama, about choosing kindness. The contrast made the whole thing even more impactful. Fan accounts dedicated to Keanu were having a field day. They were defending him fiercely, creating threads of all the good things he's done over the years. They were building a case for why his walking off wasn't him being difficult, but him finally standing up after years of always taking the high road. The phrase, Joy Behar crossed the line, started trending. So did Team Keanu. And respect costs nothing. The whole situation had become bigger than just a talk show confrontation. It became a cultural moment about celebrity culture and human decency. Behind the scenes at The View, according to sources, there were emergency meetings. Producers, network executives, the whole team trying to figure out how to handle this. Do they acknowledge it? Do they ignore it? Do they have Joy apologize? Every option had pros and cons. Apologizing might make it seem like they admitted wrongdoing, but not addressing it made them look tone-deaf. Meanwhile, Keanu was apparently just going about his day. He didn't make any statements, didn't post anything on social media, didn't do damage control. He just moved on, which honestly made people respect him even more. He said what he needed to say in that moment, set his boundary, and left. No need for a big dramatic follow-up. The movie Keanu was supposed to be promoting? It was getting more attention now than it ever would have from a normal interview. Every article about the confrontation mentioned the film. Every social media post included the title. In the weirdest way possible, the whole disaster had turned into massive publicity for his project. Some marketing experts were even wondering if the whole thing was planned. Could it be a publicity stunt? But anyone who watched the footage could tell it was real. The emotion was too raw. The tension was too genuine. You can't fake that kind of authentic frustration and disappointment. Keanu's not that good of an actor. And that's saying something because he's a pretty damn good actor. As the story continued to spread, more and more people were watching the clip who hadn't seen it live. Each new viewer had an opinion. Each share reached more people. The algorithm was loving it, pushing it to more feeds, recommending it to more users. In the attention economy, this was gold. Even if it was gold mined from a really uncomfortable situation, late-night hosts were starting to mention it in their monologues. Comedy shows were making sketches about it. It had penetrated every level of pop culture in less than 24 hours. That's how big this thing had become. It wasn't just entertainment news anymore. It was the news. And through it all, the core question remained. Who was right? Was Joy just doing her job as a provocative host? Or did she take it too far? Was Keanu being too sensitive? Or was he justified in walking out? The internet couldn't agree. And honestly, maybe there wasn't a clear answer. Maybe it was one of those situations where both sides had a point, but the execution went horribly wrong. What everyone could agree on, though, was that it was compelling television. Uncomfortable? Sure. Controversial? Absolutely. But undeniably compelling. In an age where so much of media is carefully scripted and controlled, watching something genuinely go off the rails in real time had a certain appeal. It felt real because it was real. The View had always been known for heated debates and strong opinions. That was part of the show's brand. But usually that energy was directed at political topics or social issues, not at the guests themselves. This felt different. This felt personal in a way that made people uncomfortable. For Keanu, this incident was probably just going to be a weird footnote in his career. He'd continue being who he is, doing what he does, and this would eventually fade into the background. People would still love him. He'd still be Hollywood's good guy. One confrontation wasn't going to change decades of reputation. For Joy and The View, the impact might be bigger. This was the kind of moment that makes people think twice. Future guests might be more hesitant to appear. Publicists might be more cautious about booking their clients. And the audience might start looking at the show differently, wondering if the confrontational approach is really what they want to watch every day. The whole situation also raised questions about the format of these shows. Is the goal to have good conversations or to create viral moments? Should hosts push guests to the breaking point for ratings? Where's the line between entertainment and exploitation? These are questions the industry has been grappling with forever. But this incident brought them back to the forefront in a major way. As night fell and the story hit its first full day in the news cycle, there was no sign of it slowing down. If anything, it was picking up steam. International media was covering it. Foreign celebrities were commenting on it. It had gone global. A confrontation that lasted just a few minutes on a daytime talk show had become a worldwide conversation about respect, media, and celebrity culture. And somewhere in all of this chaos, there was probably a lesson. Maybe it was about treating people with basic kindness, even when you disagree. Maybe it was about knowing when to walk away from a toxic situation. Maybe it was about the price we pay for making entertainment out of conflict. Or maybe it was just a reminder that everyone, even the nicest person in Hollywood, has a breaking point. The View would go on. Joy would still be Joy. Keanu would still be Keanu. But this moment of genuine, unscripted human conflict playing out on live television, this would be remembered. Talked about, referenced, studied in media classes, added to the long list of iconic talk show moments that people never forget. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whose side you were on, you couldn't deny one thing: it was absolutely unforgettable. And in the world of television, where so much content gets lost in the noise, being unforgettable is everything. The producers watching the ratings climb probably had mixed feelings. Yes, the numbers were great. Yes, everyone was talking about the show. But they'd also witnessed one of their guests being pushed until he walked off set. They'd seen their host in a confrontation that made a lot of people uncomfortable. Success came with a cost, and that cost was their reputation taking a serious hit. Advertisers were probably having their own meetings, wondering if they wanted to be associated with this kind of content. Brand safety is a real concern in media, and this incident was about as unsafe as it gets. Controversial is good for attention, but it's not always good for business. For the other hosts on the panel, this was awkward territory. They worked with Joy every day, but they also had to think about their own brands, their own reputations. Being silent during the confrontation could be seen as complicity, but speaking up against their co-host on live television would create internal conflict. They were in a no-win situation, which is probably why they looked so uncomfortable throughout the whole thing. The audience who was there live would be telling this story for years. Imagine being able to say you were in the studio when Keanu Reeves walked off The View. That's the kind of story you tell at parties. The kind of moment that becomes part of your personal history. They didn't just watch it on TV. They felt the tension in the room. They heard every word without editing. They were part of television history. As the dust started to settle, what became clear was that this wasn't just about one confrontation. It was a reflection of bigger issues in how we consume media, how we treat public figures, and what we consider entertainment. The conversation it started was bigger than Joy or Keanu or The View. It was about all of us and what we're willing to accept in the name of entertainment. The fact that it happened to Keanu made it more impactful. If it had been an actor known for being difficult or temperamental, people might have shrugged it off. But this was the guy everyone loves. The guy who's famously patient and kind. For him to reach this point said something powerful about what had happened in that studio. Social media analysts noted that the story had a rare quality. It appealed across age groups and demographics. Young people on TikTok, middle-aged people on Facebook, older viewers who actually watch The View, everyone had an opinion. That kind of universal engagement is hard to achieve. Usually, stories dominate in one demographic but not others. This one cut across everything. The memes were getting more creative as time went on. People were editing the footage with dramatic music, creating parody versions, making it into reaction GIFs. The internet was doing what the internet does best, taking a moment and running with it in every direction possible. Some of it was funny, some was insightful, some was just noise. But all of it kept the story alive and growing. Psychologists started weighing in too, talking about conflict resolution, about setting boundaries, about the importance of walking away from toxic situations. Self-help gurus used it as an example in their content. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to analyzing what happened. It became a case study in so many different fields beyond just entertainment. For anyone hoping this would blow over quickly, they were disappointed. This had legs. This was going to be discussed for weeks, maybe months. It might even come up years from now in retrospectives about television moments or celebrity conflicts. It had that quality of timelessness that makes certain incidents part of pop culture forever. And still, through all of this, Keanu remained quiet. No interviews, no statements, no attempts to capitalize on the moment or control the narrative. He'd said what he had to say in that studio, and that was enough for him. That restraint only made people admire him more. In a world where everyone feels the need to comment on everything, his silence spoke volumes. The View's next episode would be fascinating to watch. Would they address it? Would Joy say anything? Would there be an elephant in the room that everyone pretended not to see? How do you move forward from something like this? Those questions had people already planning to tune in, which meant the ratings boost would continue at least for a while. But underneath all the drama, all the takes, all the analysis, there was a simple human story. A person came to work expecting one kind of day and got something completely different. A host pushed too hard. A guest hit his limit. Words were said. Feelings were hurt. Someone walked away. Strip away all the celebrity and cameras and audience, and it's a situation that happens in regular life all the time. Maybe that's why it resonated so deeply. We've all been in situations where we had to decide whether to stay and take it or stand up and leave. The beauty of this moment, if you can call it that, was in its authenticity. In an industry built on illusion and carefully crafted images, this was real, messy, uncomfortable, and completely real. And sometimes, that's exactly what people need to see. Not because conflict is good, but because honesty is valuable, even when it's painful. As the night deepened and people on the East Coast started going to bed, the story was just heating up on the West Coast. Time zones meant waves of new audiences discovering what happened. Each coast had their own peak times for social media activity, so the story kept resurging throughout the day. It was the gift that kept on giving for content creators, news outlets, and anyone trying to get clicks and views. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new angles, new opinions. But tonight, the story was still in that perfect space where everyone was still forming their initial reactions. The shock was fresh. The emotions were raw. Tomorrow, people would start to overthink it. But tonight, it was pure reaction. And those pure reactions were fascinating to watch unfold across millions of people simultaneously. The View had created a moment. Whether it was the kind of moment they wanted to create was debatable, but there was no denying they'd created something memorable. Something that would be talked about, analyzed, and remembered. In television, that's both success and failure wrapped up in one complicated package. And for Keanu Reeves, the man who just wanted to talk about his movie and ended up in the middle of a controversy, this was probably just another reminder of why he usually stays away from talk shows and media drama. Sometimes being the nice guy means people think they can push you around. But every nice guy has a limit. And when you reach it, sometimes the nicest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. The cameras caught every second. The mics picked up every word. The audience witnessed every moment. And now, millions of people had seen it all. That's the power and the danger of live television. When things go wrong, they go wrong in front of everyone. There's no take two, no edit to make it better. What happens, happens. And everyone sees it exactly as it was. As the final moments played out in that studio, with Keanu walking toward the exit and Joy trying to have the last word, neither of them probably realized how big this would become, how many people would see it, how long it would be discussed, how it would impact both of their careers in different ways. In the moment, it was just a confrontation. Hours later, it was history. The door closed behind Keanu as he left the studio. The camera lingered on the empty seat where he'd been sitting just minutes before. The other hosts looked at each other uncomfortably. Joy tried to regain control. The audience was still buzzing with shocked energy. And somewhere, a producer was probably having a panic attack while simultaneously watching the social media numbers explode. That's when Whoopi finally stepped in fully, her voice cutting through the chaos as she said, "We need to take a break right now. We'll be right back." The camera cut to commercial, but not before catching one last shot of Joy's face. A mixture of defiance and realization crossing her features. Behind the scenes, staff members were scrambling. Keanu was already in the hallway, his security team surrounding him as he made his way to the exit. A production assistant tried to approach him, probably to see if there was any way to fix this, But Keanu just shook his head politely and kept walking. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was just done. Completely done. In the studio, during the commercial break, Joy was defending herself to anyone who would listen. "I was just asking questions," she kept saying, her voice rising. "That's literally my job. If he can't handle that, that's on him." But the energy in the room told a different story. The crew was quiet. The other hosts weren't backing her up. Even some audience members were shaking their heads. One of the producers approached the panel, speaking quickly and quietly. They needed to figure out how to handle the rest of the show. They still had segments to fill, other topics to discuss. But how do you just move on from something like that? How do you pretend everything is normal when your guest just walked off the set after calling out your host on live television? Keanu reached the exit door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the bright daylight. Cameras outside caught him briefly before his team ushered him toward a waiting vehicle. His face was calm now, centered. Whatever storm had been building inside him during that confrontation seemed to have passed. He'd said what needed to be said, and now he was choosing peace by removing himself from the situation. Back inside, the commercial break was ending. The stage manager counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2. They were back live. Whoopi's face filled the screen as she attempted to steer the show back on track, but the empty chair next to Joy spoke louder than anything anyone could say. The view would continue for the rest of the hour, but everyone watching knew that nothing else that happened that day would matter. The show was already over the moment Keanu walked out that door. And just like that, with the sound of a door closing and footsteps fading away, one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history came to an end. Keanu was gone. The confrontation was over. But the conversation it started, that was just beginning.